Are you a leader? Do you want to be? Listen up. I've got 10 tips for all successful pro-life leaders. Hey everyone, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of Explicitly Pro-Life. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about my 10 favorite tips for leadership. This is something that, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And just to be real with you for a little bit. I was asked to lead and launch Students for Life America shortly after I turned 21. And I was excited. I had a lot of drive and ambition. I still do. I want to win. I still do. This was a great opportunity. The fact that I was given this opportunity to lead this national organization is unbelievable. Okay. I'm still overwhelmed at, I'm just overwhelmed at what God has been able to do through Students for Life and that I was able to have some part in it. It's unbelievable. But anyway, one of the things I learned very early on after starting Students for Life was I needed to become a better leader. I had to become a better leader. I had to become a better manager of my team, of my staff. I need to become a better leader of people. And I think that's something that's, really important that we don't often think about in the pro-life movement. A lot of times, folks who are chosen to lead a pregnancy resource center or a Students for Life group or a local right to life group, it's not necessarily because they had the most leadership potential. A lot of times it's the person left standing in the room who's willing and is gritty and is going to stick through it. That's a great leadership quality. But they're the most passionate person. But it doesn't mean they're going to be the best leader. And you can have all the passion you want. But if you're not a good leader of people, who's going to listen to you? How are you going to produce change? And I think this is something we really need to think about in the pro-life movement. And I got the idea to do this podcast because I was on Facebook. And, I get kind of busy during the day, as you can probably imagine. But at night, I try to get on Facebook. And in the morning, I try to get on Facebook and scroll the news. What did I miss? And, because I've liked so many Students for Life groups, pages, pretty much my newsfeed is the entire pro-life movement. So it's great. I get a bird's eye view very quickly what pro-lifers are talking about, what they care about, what's happened. I get a lot of the same, I get a lot of redundancy though too, but it's really good for me. And so I'm subscribed to all these groups or, I don't know how you call it on Facebook. I'm in all these groups. I've liked these groups. And there's this one group and someone had posed a question of who are your favorite pro-life leaders? And it was awkward because I was, some people mentioned me, not a lot, but some people mentioned me. But it was awkward because I wanted to get on to say something, but I was like, I just don't know how this is going to be perceived. So I didn't. But I think sometimes we confuse in the pro-life movement spokespeople with leaders. There's people who have great stories, have great testimonies, who are great at speaking or gifted orators. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a leader. And I think we have to be careful too. And I've seen this in I've been in the pro-life movement 16, 17 years, full-time with Students for Life for 13 and a half years. I've seen this happen just since we've launched Students for Life, where there's people who kind of come and go in the pro-life movement. People are like, oh my gosh, that person's an amazing leader. And there's somebody who did something or said something, it was great, and they released some video, but then they kind of just fall away from the scene. They don't really stick. And I think we have to be careful about giving leadership status to certain people. I also think we need to be careful about just idolizing regular people in the pro-life movement. I think you can aspire to do something great in the pro-life movement, and they can use other leaders as an example or as mentors. I also feel uncomfortable with the whole fangirling of people in the pro-life movement. I get really uncomfortable. If you ever have met me at an event, sometimes people or students will come up and be like, oh my gosh, I love you. I'm your biggest fan. I get really uncomfortable with that. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I'm a human being who sins and messes up all the time. So I do get uncomfortable with people thinking that I'm someone to look up to. And maybe that's a problem with me. But Anyway, so this started this idea in my head of like, we really need to talk more about what leadership is and who leaders are. And John Maxwell, he's a great kind of leadership. He's a former evangelical pastor. He writes on tons of leadership books and leadership conferences. He was the person when I really figured out that I needed to be a better leader if I was going to grow Students for Life, if it was going to work. I kind of spent an entire summer like reading every book he'd ever written. And I can quote John Maxwell still to this day because I read so much. But one of the things, he has these like 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, which I highly encourage you to read if you're struggling leading your Students for Life group, if you want to start a pro-life ministry, if you're, taking over a pregnancy center. Read that book because he goes through these 21 laws, and I actually regurgitate some of his laws here in these top 10 tips I'm going to give you. But one of his laws, and this isn't one of mine, is the law of the lid, that, your organization, your mission, whatever you're trying to lead is only going to grow as much as your leader's leadership ability. And if your leader's ability, the person who's in charge, if their leadership ability is pretty low level, the organization is not going to grow. And I see this now in the pro-life movement. Like, I can literally in my mind think of certain people. I'm like, oh my gosh, if only they would stop thinking like this, if only they would take some time to better lead their people, they could be unstoppable. Their organization can be unstoppable. And it's hard, and I have to like keep my mouth shut because it's not going to be perceived if I say something. But it's like one of the things of like, I pray that they find that mentor to help them through that. So leadership is important. We need strong leaders in the pro-life movement. But leadership isn't what you always think of it. It isn't the person who has the most likes or is the most recognizable name. I see leaders all the time in the pro-life movement that no one even knows, that very few people know, but they're doing an incredible thing, leading a group of people who have persuaded an entire movement to shift gears and change the narrative, that they kind of work in the behind the scenes. There was that scriptural quote, like, I must decrease so God can increase. And so it's something I question all the time is, it's Students for Life. We talk about Students for Life. Like you don't see my face on our website, but you see my name on all the emails and all the letters requesting financial support. And that's important because people need a relationship with somebody. But it's also important to me that people understand that Students for Life isn't Kristan Hawkins. Kristan Hawkins gets hit by a bus. We call this at the office as what's the hit them by a bus plan. If Kristan Hawkins gets hit by a bus tomorrow and I die, my organization has to survive. And I always am questioning it. If I die tomorrow, does the organization survive? Does this part of the team survive? Or do we need to do work there? Because that's one of your greatest tests as a leader. So that's rule number 1 for you. My tip is, I think leaders make other leaders, and leaders make sure that they leave that legacy, that when they leave, everything doesn't fall apart. It's like my biggest failure with my Students for Life, it wasn't called Students for Life, it was called Bethanians for Life at Bethany College. When I was in college, was 2 years after I left, the group fell apart. It failed to continue on. I failed to inspire another leader, to build up another leader who could lead the group in facing the opposition that we face regularly on a college campus. That's one of my biggest regrets, that I lead an organization called Students for Life, and my Students for Life group, like I said, before Students for Life, didn't succeed. That's why a lot of the trainings and tools and tips we give to students are things that I did wrong that I needed to figure out how to do right. So I think that's my first tip is leaders build other leaders. Your organization, your group, your pregnancy center should be able to survive without you. If it can't survive without you, you have a problem. I have one of my mentors in the conservative movement who I love, and I'm not going to say her name. She passed away a couple years ago. She did amazing things that have transformed American culture. And this literally stopped the abortion industry at one point single-handedly from advancing and ensuring a constitutional right to abortion. But when she passed, the organization fell apart. It's splintered, and there's infighting. There's all kinds of things going on. She failed to pass on that leadership, to make that other leader. So leaders make other leaders. Okay, tip 1. Tip 2. This is something I always kind of impress upon our Students for Life groups is leaders make, they make the plans. They're prepared. When you come to a meeting and you're running a Students for Life group, make sure you have an agenda and you know what's going to happen. I have a board member who said, I never go into a meeting or I never take a meeting unless I know what I want the outcome of that meeting to be. That's pretty intense. And you don't always know what the outcome of a meeting is, but it would help me if I would do that. Preparation isn't just knowing the facts. You have to be able to think about what are the outcomes, what are the possibilities that are going to come up when you're planning something. That's one of the things I always do at Students for Life. Of when we're planning an event or a protest, I'm constantly thinking of, okay, this could go this way, it could go this way, this could go really bad this way. How are we going to respond? How are we going to prepare our students for that? Okay, leaders are always prepared, and you have to be the one to be thinking and have that 30,000 foot view level, because a lot of times the people on your staff or the people on your team, they're going to be thinking about the task. They're going to be thinking about the one thing you told them to do, make sure they do it right, and hopefully they do that thing right. But you're thinking, what do we do the next day? What do we do right after this event? What do we do if this happens during the event? You have to be prepared. You have to have thought about that. That goes in the second tip. You have to be able to see the big picture. Leaders see the big picture. You have to be able to see that big picture. And I know that's challenging, especially for young people. I know it's when we hire students right out of college, that's one of the biggest struggles our new employees have, is seeing that 30,000 foot view level. But you have to see that big picture, because when you see that big picture, you're going to get prepared. You're going to know where you should pivot, where you should go. You have to be able to see that big picture, because that's going to help you develop your strategy moving forward. One thing that, I'm always thinking of it at Students for Life is not only my task with advancing the mission of Students for Life and growing our organization, but I'm also, a part of the pro-life movement. And so when I make decisions for Students for Life, I have to weigh what's best for the movement and what's best for the organization. And sometimes I have to make decisions that are better for the movement than they are for the organization. For example, this January, we're not hosting a Students for Life American National Conference, even though we've been hosting it for 20 years, and it's the largest pro-life conference in the world. And more than, we had 2,500 students last year. It was amazing. And I love it. And we have so many life-changing stories. This year we're hosting and we're partnering with other national groups to do something called the National Pro-Life Summit. It's the same day. It's the day after the March for Life. It's January 25th. I highly encourage you to register. It's called prolifesummit.org is the website. We're going to be, I think, breakfast and lunch is covered. Every national pro-life organization is going to be there. It doesn't matter your age, the niche you want to serve in the pro-life movement. We will have a training for you. And what's so cool is the theme is about a post-Roe America. So the goal is you're going to come and get trained. So you're going to be inspired at the March for Life. And then we're going to give you your marching orders the day after the Pro-Life Summit. But anyway, back to my story. So we're hosting this National Pro-Life Summit. And it's kind of the opposite of marketing. So when you're learning marketing and branding, you always want to put your name on something. And so I remember a couple of board members were like, why are we changing the name of the Students for Life American National Conference to National Pro-Life Summit? Our name's not going to be on it. You're sharing the stage with 3 other organizations. You're going to be sharing logo and branding space with 3 other organizations. And the simple answer is hosting the National Pro-Life Summit, I truly believe, is the best decision for the pro-life movement, because it's time for the pro-life movement to unite, to show that we are united in our goal, and that we may have different mission statements and different strategies and tactics, but we are united in our goal and our vision of creating a America without abortion, and that we can work together, and working together is a good thing. So, I truly believe, and our team believes, that this is the best thing we need for the pro-life movement. But I had to make a decision that was, might be better for the movement than for Students for Life of America. But I see the big picture. I'm thinking about the big picture. I may be wrong. It could be a failure. I don't think it will be. But I am thinking about the big picture. The other tip. So we're at tip 1, 2, 3. Tip 4. Leaders set goals. This is something I constantly challenge Students for Life groups with. Where are you headed? What are your goals? A lot of Students for Life groups, they'll plan an event, and then everyone's tired. They take a break, they regroup, they plan another event. And then at the end of the year, it's like, what did you accomplish? Well, we hosted these events. Set a goal. We want to transform our college campus in 5 years to be friendly towards pregnant parenting students. That's a goal. Then plan those events, plan those meetings around that goal. Goals are important. They can get your team together. You can get your team excited, working together. And you can actually accomplish something. Because let me tell you something. When you're trying to recruit people to your Students for Life group, trying to recruit people to your local Right to Life group, if you're like, well, yeah, we have a booth at the Apple Festival, and we passed out some voter registration things, and we went to the fundraising banquet with the pregnancy center. That doesn't sound very exciting. Why would you give up your most precious asset, your time, for that? Like, okay, cool, I'm pro-life, but I could do those 3 things on my own. But if you said, oh, well, I lead this community pro-life group, and our goal is to shut down the Planned Parenthood in that town next to us, and this is what we're doing, that's exciting. That's something I want to join. That's something that I'm going to give up my time for. So set a goal. Set goals for your team. And make sure, they're SMART goals. Make sure people on your team know where they stand and what part of that goal they're playing, right? Who's responsible, who's accountable. But set goals. Don't be afraid to set goals. The 5th tip, leaders have high standards. I can't stress this enough. You have to have high standards for your team. You have to expect great things from your team. And you have to know you're going to be disappointed, because we're all human beings and we all fail. But have high standards. If you don't have high standards, how are you ever going to get there? How are you going to inspire your team to do more than they've ever done before? How are you going to challenge them, push them, be driving them to do more? And not only do you have to have high standards for your team, you have to have high standards for yourself. You have to have high standards for yourself. I mean, one of the things that I know our team at Students for Life appreciates about me, and I've heard this because, trust me, I know what they appreciate about me, and I know what they don't appreciate about me. But one of the things I heard that I know that they appreciate about me is that they know when I ask them to do something hard, it's not something I wouldn't do myself, or that I'm not doing myself. That I'm right there in the trenches doing it with them. That, yeah, they might have to work until midnight tonight to get a video out or to get this product out for our Students for Life groups, but I'm going to be up there with them. I'm going to be staying up and editing and approving it. Or they know I'm going to be traveling and sleeping even fewer hours than they're going to be sleeping. They know I'm in there with them. I have high standards for myself, and I have high standards for my team. That's what inspires people to say, I'm going to do more than I've ever done before. I'm going to work harder than I've ever worked before because they're relying on me. You have to have that willingness to work harder. If you're a leader, you have to, we always tell Students for Life leaders, be the first one at the meeting and be the last one to leave. Be the first one there to set up, because if you tell everyone, oh, we need to set up this display on campus and it's raining and really cold, and you show up 5 minutes before, do you think that those people who showed up 30 minutes before to set up are going to do that next time for you? Nah. The 6th tip, leaders master their attitude. So John Maxwell, he has a saying, attitude determines your altitude. And I cannot agree more. Attitude matters. I have never asked an employee to leave or fired an employee at Students for Life, and we have 50 team members, and we've been in existence for 13 years, who failed because of skill or lack of skill. I can train that. If someone's lacking in a skill area, if someone isn't doing a very good job, I can train them. And sometimes I move them to a different position where I think that they're more gifted. Every time I've ever let someone go is because of their attitude. Your attitude determines everything. Because you know what? If you stink at a certain part of your job or a task you've been given, but you're willing to learn, you're willing to give it your all, you're willing to be gritty, you're going to learn that. Or someone's going to appreciate that and say, okay, well, we've tried, but you're not gifted here. Let's move you over here because you're still a good, valuable team member. But if you have a bad attitude, if you start having a negative attitude of, oh, I suck, I can't do anything, You're not going to work the hardest you can work. You're going to start showing up right when the day starts, leaving, be the first one to leave. Attitude determines everything. 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 Like, I should have started with this tip. Tip number 6. Leaders are team players. I talked about this at the beginning. You do not see my face on Students for Life's webpage for a big reason. I don't want anyone to ever think Students for Life of America is Kristan Hawkins. Students for Life is way more than Kristan Hawkins. Yes, I have been blessed to be called to lead this organization, but it's not simply my organization. It will survive after I'm gone. It will go on. And the way it will go on is because I have an amazing team. We have an amazing team. If you look at the growth of Students for Life of America, I actually think you can trace back our growth to the hiring of Tina Whittington. Tina is our executive vice president. Now, if you work for Students for Life for a long time, you'll notice you'll get like tons of titles. So I think she's had like 4 or 5 different titles throughout her 10 plus years of Students for Life. But her current title is executive vice president. Tina runs the show. She's in our office in Fredericksburg. She is the one who allows me to be able to go and travel and be everywhere. You never know where I'm going to be in the United States because Tina's there running the day-to-day operations of the organization. I think you can directly trace back our success at Students for Life to when I'm taking credit for hiring her, when I hired Tina Whittington. Because Tina is the yin to my yang. Where I am weak, she is strong. She always says she's the Aaron to my Moses. She is a true servant leader. She's allowed us to grow our team, and she's a much better manager of people than I am. She's a great problem solver and can dig in, and she doesn't ever need the credit or want the credit. She just gets the job done. Tina is an amazing team player. Every once in a while you'll see her on TV or she'll do something if I'm not able to go, but she doesn't need to be on TV. She doesn't need to see her name out there. She does it for her team. She does it for her cause and her mission to abolish abortion. You have to be a team player. You have to know when to give credit. You need to know when to allow team members, to come up to you with ideas and to give them permission to fail. I have failed multiple times at Students for Life. I can name like 20 different times any given day that I've failed in, the current history of Students for Life, of projects we've tried. But we always want to give team members the ability to say, I think this is missing. Let me try to do it. Some of our best ideas, some of the best things we've ever done have been because we had a team member with an entrepreneurial vision and said, I want to do this. And I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. Try it out. But you have to be a team player. And then you have to give that person the credit they deserve. You have to thank them and make sure that they feel appreciated. Tip number 8, leaders build up the team. These are kind of all going together. Leaders build up your team. Once again, you have to give them credit. You have to give your team members credit. You have to thank them. I'm not a real good, let me be honest with you. I'm very vulnerable today. I don't know. I'm not very good at giving recognition or appreciation to our team members. And it stems not because I'm not appreciative. It's because I have a very high level of expectation for myself. So I have a hard time. I don't expect anyone to thank me for what I'm doing. And it doesn't really matter if you thank me for what I'm doing. I have in my mind what I need to do, and I need to do it to win. But I recognize not most people aren't like me. So I actually have notes, like make sure you send that thank you to that team member. Make sure you say thanks. I've had to do a better job of making sure I'm verbally saying to someone, thank you for that. Hey, did you guys know that this was so-and-so's idea and they came up with the idea? I always get uncomfortable when people are like, oh my gosh, I love this video. And I'm like, oh great, I have no idea. It wasn't my idea, but it was someone's our team's idea. People always ask me, where did you come up with the tagline, I'm the pro-life generation? I literally do not know. We had a team meeting and that came out of the team meeting. I don't think it was me who came up with it. I'm pretty sure it wasn't, but I don't know who it was. But somebody on our team did. But you have to be able to build up the other team. This is also building up the other team is good management. When do you criticize and how do you criticize? When do you give constructive criticism? Tip number 9, leaders take risks. This is something I especially notice with young pro-life leaders or young pro-life individuals who want to become leaders. They're unwilling to take the risk. The reason we have Students for Life of America today is because one angel investor, one philanthropist took a risk on a bunch of kids. Is because I took a risk. Now, I can say probably ignorantly of how much work it was going to be. I think God probably kept me ignorant of the pain and the tears that were coming on purpose. But I did take that risk. I left a very well-paying job in the government, comfortable job, full benefits, and I took that risk to run Students for Life of America. You have to be willing to take risks, and you will fail. But John Maxwell has a saying, failing forward. You make sure when you fail forward. What did you learn from it? What can you advance? What can you change for the next time? Failing is okay. We're taught that like failing is always bad. It's not always bad. Good can come out of your failures. You can learn a whole bunch to do better the next time. But you have to be willing to take that risk and be willing to fail. And that's what I was saying earlier. When we have team members who come to me and say, I want to do this. And it's almost you have to give permission to fail. Yes, try it. You can mitigate the risk of the failure and saying, okay, I only want you to spend 10 hours on this, or don't spend more than $1,500 on this. But you can mitigate the risk of the failure, but you have to be willing to have a failure once in a while. And I think it's hard, I think, for people, especially a lot of us in the program are type A and we're overachievers. We don't want to fail, but you have to be willing to fail to take that risk. And if you're not willing to fail, you're never going to take that risk. And you're always going to be afraid. And you're always going to be the person be like, I really want to start that pregnancy center. I really want to start that new ministry, but you'll never do it because you're unwilling to take the risk, because you're afraid of the failure. You can't be afraid of the failure. You're going to fail. You're a human being. You're not perfect. None of us are. So just accept it. Okay, tip number 10, my last tip. Leaders take responsibility. There's that, I don't know who said it, but it's like when everything goes right, it's not your doing, it's your team. And when everything goes wrong, it's your fault. And you have to be willing to accept responsibility. And you can't play the blame game or make excuses. You have to accept the criticism and learn from it and move on. And sometimes the criticisms are not valid, that they're, I have people call me all the time who think that I'm somebody else in the pro-life movement and want to complain to me about something they think I did that I had nothing to do. And I'm like, thank you for your concern. Half the time I don't even say you've got the wrong person, because what does it matter? They want to be heard. But you can't make excuses. And I think that's hard for a lot of us, and especially me. Like, I never like to be wrong. It's my personality and it's the way God made me. But I am going to be wrong, and I have to be willing to accept the criticism. What's so great, and I talked about Tina earlier, is she and I have a great friendship and relationship. And Tina is the one. She sent me an email about a month ago. And she sent it to my personal email, so my assistant couldn't read it. But she needed to call me out for something that I had done. And she was right. I was like, well, I thought that person was overreacting, but that wasn't the answer, right? I wasn't going to respond like, well, that person's just overreacting. I'm like, no, you're right. I should have done better. I should have held myself to a higher standard there. But she did it in a way where it wasn't judgmental. It's just like, hey, I want to bring your attention to something you did, and this is how it made this person feel. And I think next time, I think you should try to do it this way. And so she corrected me in such a graceful and Christian way, way better than I correct people, because like I said, I'm not a great manager of people. If you listen to my Kanye episode, I ain't mean, I'm just focused. It's a quote from Sella, one of his new songs. But Tina did such a great job. And then it was my job to take responsibility for my actions. It's also my job to take responsibility when my team fails. When my team fails, when someone messes up, no matter if I had anything to do with it, I have to take responsibility, because I am the one who hired that person. I'm ultimately responsible for them. That's the hard thing about being a leader, is you're ultimately responsible for the actions of your team. And so you have to be one who's willing to stand up and say, okay, I'll lead, and I'll take responsibility for my team. So after you heard all of these 10 tips, you might be thinking, I don't want to be a pro-life leader. It's hard. Being a pro-life leader is hard. Being a leader of anything is hard. And you're not going to get a lot of credit or praise a lot of time. But But the question is what are you called to do? Are you called to be a leader of others, to lead an effort, to start an effort in your community? If you are, that's awesome. But these are some tips that you need to know, you need to learn. Tips that, honestly, quite frankly, I wish I would have known when I launched Students for Life. I look back at the first 5 years of Students for Life, and like, actually, I have a hard time actually even looking back at the first 5 years of Students for Life, because it is so cringeworthy. The things I did, the decisions I made, I'm like, what was I thinking? I mean, I never will doubt the existence of our Savior, but the fact that our organization still survives despite the fact that I was a 21-year-old who knew nothing. And I'm still learning. I'm 34. I'm still learning. I still am a baby compared to most of these amazing leaders in the pro-life movement. But I'm still trying. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to improve my lid, right? So I can grow. So my organization, my team can grow. So these are some of my best tips for you. I hope they're helpful. If you have questions, you can always comment at the bottom of the YouTube video of this, or you can find me on Instagram, Kristan Hawkins, or on Facebook, Kristan Hawkins, or on Twitter, Kristan Hawkins. Make sure you follow me, and make sure you tell others to subscribe. I definitely want to get our subscriptions increasing in the next couple months. Like I said, I'm insanely competitive, so I have like a number in mind of how many regular downloads I want on this podcast, and we haven't hit it yet, so I'm going to keep driving for that. But I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it helped you kind of start thinking and percolating about what you can do different, what you can change within your local community organization, your pregnancy center leadership, or your Students for Life group. So thanks so much for listening, guys, and I'll check you next week on Explicitly Pro-Life.